Shana Tova to everyone once again. Thank you for choosing to celebrate these High Holy Days with Macomb, New Jersey. We are so happy to all be together. And we look forward to being together through Yom Kippur and then throughout the year. We look forward to virtual programming and when it's safe to gather once again, to being back together in person. At the end of January, my husband Nathan and I took our son Sam to the airport. Together with the parents of 88 other kids, we said our tear-filled goodbyes as our children embarked on the journey of a lifetime. 4 months studying in Israel, exploring the land, the culture, and the people. A few weeks later, at the end of February, Meg, Jack, my parents, and I arrived in Israel for the parent pilgrimage, and Nathan, he stayed home with the dog. Shortly after we arrived in Israel, the coronavirus arrived too. It seemed to have little to no impact on our trip because Israel was doing a great job of contact tracing. So we knew where there had been people with the coronavirus and we just didn't go to those places. And it was great to see Sam thriving in his program. On our last day in Israel, we visited with dear friends Vered and Ido. They both hold PhDs in psychology. It is always interesting to sit and chat with them. Vered is the worrier in the family, and Ido, not so much. But as we approached them, Ido said, "I'm not hugging and I'm not shaking hands because of Corona." Over lunch, we discussed the spread of this new virus. By this point, Italy had already shut down completely. Ido commented, "If Israel has to go into quarantine or make life-altering changes, we, the citizens of Israel, will do it. Because when it comes right down to it, Israeli citizens are willing to give up their civil liberties for the good of the country." Then he continued, "In America, I don't see that being the case." How fortuitous this discussion was. We arrived home from Israel to empty supermarket shelves. A week later, Meg's and Jack's school closed down, and 3 days after that, Sam and all 88 kids in his program were put on a chartered plane and sent home from Israel, as Israel took dramatic steps to stop the spread of the virus. And while we were experiencing a complete lockdown here in the New York metropolitan area, so much of the rest of the country was not. It was like we were on our own little island, the island of the New York metropolitan area and the island of California and everybody else in between. They were living somewhere else, partying, enjoying spring break, free to do and come and go. It's just incredible to think about how much the world has changed in the past 7 months. Life in 2020 is unlike anything you or I have ever experienced before. We're living in a time of chaos and fear with no end in sight. In Hebrew, this is called tohu vavohu. And according to the Torah, it's what existed before God began the work of creation. There are a number of contributing factors to this tohu vavohu, this feeling of chaos and overwhelm. We watch as the rise of new COVID cases and the death toll grows every day. The level of unemployment and economic downturn is just terrifying. The issue of racial injustice has been brought to the forefront in a way that put a spotlight on inequity that cannot be ignored. Peaceful protests are being met with force. Anti-Semitism continues to be on the rise. We have serious concerns about the integrity of our upcoming election. And just listening to this list is causing my anxiety level to go through the roof. The impact of all of this has been a sense of tremendous loss. Loss of a sense of health and well-being, physically, mentally, spiritually. Loss of control over our lives and our physical connection with others. I've heard too many heartbreaking stories of people who wished they could have been in the hospital with their sick and dying loved ones, or visiting parents or grandparents in nursing homes. This inability to help leads to feelings of loss and pain, of guilt and sadness. For many of us, there's also a sense of loss of trust in institutions and in authority figures. And we have no idea when any of this will come to an end, making it difficult to plan for the future. We're living in a state of trauma. We're living with something called moral injury. According to the Syracuse University Moral Injury Project, moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience, one's moral compass, when a person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress one's own moral beliefs, values, or ethical codes of conduct. Let me just say that one more time. Moral injury is damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress one's own moral beliefs, values, or ethical codes of conduct. It's a disruption in an individual's confidence and expectations about one's own or others' motivation or capacity to behave in just and ethical manners. It's a leadership failure and a betrayal of what's right by a person who holds legitimate authority in a high-stakes situation. It's a deep soul wound that pierces and penetrates a person's identity, sense of morality, and relationship to others. Moral injury can lead to serious distress, depression, anger, outrage, helplessness, and despair. Moral injury can take the life of those suffering from it, both metaphorically and literally. It debilitates people, preventing them from living full and healthy lives. And the effects of moral injury go beyond the individual and can destroy one's capacity to trust others, impinging on the family system and the larger community. For most of us, I believe the moral injury that we feel today is caused by what we are witnessing on an ongoing basis. Here are a few examples. We expect that when faced with an airborne pandemic, everyone will wear a mask as a way to care for one another. That expectation has been violated because for some, the claim of personal civil liberties seems to be more important than the good of the country. People's own feeling of comfort, of breathing easy, of looking cool. These things are superseding the desire to care for others in our community and in our country. Hearing about people refusing to wear a mask or seeing people walk around without them or walking around with them but underneath their nose, which does nothing to prevent the spread of corona, this causes moral injury. We expect that when people are not feeling well, when they're sick, or when they know that they're sick because they've tested positive for a virus that they know can be deadly, a virus they know is wreaking havoc all over the world, we expect that that person is going to stay home to protect others. Moral injury takes place when we hear about people who are knowingly sick with COVID, but because they're asymptomatic or they don't feel that bad, or they've been told that this whole virus thing is a hoax or just not that serious, they're out and about, going to parties, socializing, seemingly without a care in the world. It causes moral injury. I believe a significant part of our moral injury is the direct result of government malfeasance. We expect our governmental leaders to have our safety, protection, and well-being as a top priority. And yet, on a national level, we have not found this to be the case. When faced with something as serious as the coronavirus, we expect our leaders to be honest, upfront, and truthful with us. We're lucky here in New Jersey. We have a governor who I believe has acted in our best interests. It has not been easy. It has not been pain-free, but it has enabled New Jersey to flatten the curve enough that we're able to gather just a little bit more outside, to eat outside, and to open some of our businesses that so desperately needed to be reopened. But that's not the case in every state. So now that we have a name for the feelings and the pain that we're living with, the question arises, is moral injury permanent? Is there a way to heal and move forward? The answer is yes and no. Right now, we're still in the midst of all of this. It's very hard to begin the healing process until we've passed the trauma and can be on a path to healing. But we can begin the process of healing just a little bit. We can't go back and change what has already been done, but we can attempt to repair the harm and heal as we move forward. When we heal from moral injury, it's through a process of soul repair. We restore our souls. Jewish tradition shares this concept of soul repair many times throughout our sacred texts. From Psalm 23, we are told, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul. From Lamentations, we are taught, for these do I weep, my eyes flow with tears. Far from me is any comforter who might revive my soul. And from the book of Job, we are told, truly God does all these things 2 and 3 times to a person, to bring his soul back from the pit, to revive his soul from the pit, that he may bask in the light of life. Yes, our souls are aching and broken at this time, but we have pathways to repair, using what our people have used for centuries. It is 3 roads to repair, and they are the same 3 themes of the High Holy Days: tefillah, teshuvah, and tzedakah. Tefillah, prayer, it gives us a way to engage in serious reflection. It helps us to reconnect with our moral compass. It enables us to seek support from religious tradition. Teshuvah, repentance, it gives us the opportunity to take responsibility for our actions and to make amends. It gives us time to grant forgiveness to those who have hurt us, and gives us time to think about the ways in which we will act differently as we go forward. Tzedakah, engaging with the world reconnects us with our local community and to the world at large. It gives us a chance to give back in a whole host of ways. For some, it's through money. For some, it's through time. And for some, it's through the work of our hands. Tzedakah gives us a chance to do the work of restorative justice. When God began to create the world, it was tohu vavohu. It was unformed and there was chaos. But there was also merachefet al panei hamayim, a wind on the surface of the water, a presence in the midst of the chaos that brought hope and possibility. I know it's hard to feel hopeful, especially when there is no end in sight to this pandemic and to the fallout that has been caused by it. Yet we still have to live with hope, because the alternative is despair. And in Jewish tradition, despair is not acceptable. So where can we find hope? We have to seek it out in ways we may never have had to seek it out before. We have to look for it in small, granular spaces. Hope can be found in the sun shining on our face. Hope can be found in the raindrops that quench the soil. Hope can be heard in the sound of children playing outside. Hope can be found in the flower that blooms or in the changing of the leaves as they turn to beautiful fall colors. Hope is found in the wedding of a young couple who had planned for a big wedding with hundreds of people, but who now stand beneath the chuppah in their backyard, surrounded only by their friends in an intimacy that is pure love and beauty. Hope is found in the birth of a new baby. Hope is found in connecting with old friends through Zoom or by phone. Hope is found in all of us being together to celebrate these high holy days in a brand new way. Hope is found anytime we take a moment to recognize the good in our lives and to express gratitude. Today is Rosh Hashannah. As we celebrate the creation of the world and the start of the new year, may each of us, using our traditions of old, begin the process of soul repair so that we may begin to heal from our moral injury. May we go from chaos to order and wholeness. May we go from feelings of loss to feelings of connection and renewed purpose. And may we find our hope restored so that we can see the beauty and goodness that is all around us, enabling us to plan for a future that is bright, positive, and filled with happiness and well-being. I wish each of you a Shana Tova, a sweet, happy, and healthy New Year.